Alrighty, it is noon and we are recording. Hello and welcome back to Welty at Home, the slow reading virtual book club that alternates works by Eudora Welty with works by authors connected to Welty. Today we continue our series exploring the correspondence of Eudora Welty and Ross Macdonald, and Meanwhile There Are Letters, edited by Suzanne Mars and Tom Nolan. During this series, we have read and discussed about a chapter each week, and we will conclude our discussion next Monday, April 13th, with the final chapter and the appendix at the end. However, I am delighted to announce a special Welty at Home bonus session on Monday, May 4th, with book club member and Welty scholar Melissa Fox, as well as Millsaps professor and Welty scholar in residence Michael Pickard, and a digital Welty Lab student, where the three will be sharing a little bit more about their project, A Piece of News. I'll let Melissa speak more to that in a moment if she'd like. But at that special session, we will also formally announce our next book club picks, and I will release the reading schedule. In the meantime, I'm Anna Traylor, the Special Projects Coordinator at Eudora Welty House and Garden, and we are grateful to Suzanne Mars, Eudora Welty's friend and biographer and Professor Emerita of Millsaps College, for guiding these discussions. Just some quick housekeeping. To comment or ask a question, click the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand. If you are on a tablet or a phone, you may have to tap the screen for this option to appear. And a lively discussion often takes place in the chat, so be sure to glance over at that chat box every now and again. And with that, Suzanne, would you like to say anything, or should I invite Melissa to mention a little bit?
Let's have Melissa first, and then I'll say something.
Wonderful. Melissa, could you share a little bit about your bonus session?
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, we're hoping to share a little bit more about the newspaper project that Michael Pickard and I have been working on with his student, Rose, at Digital Welty Lab. Kind of run people through the site, give them a chance to see what's there and how to use it for their own projects.
Melissa, could you tell us that A Piece of News traces Eudora Welty's appearance in newspapers all over the country, correct? Or is it international as well?
International as well. So I'm right now have found articles in Great Britain, Australia, Canada. But it would be great to think about ways to get other articles from other foreign papers as well. Right now, I just rounded the corner on 3,400 articles so far. So getting close to having a good set from the 1940s. And then 1922 to 1940 is pretty complete to what I have access to right now. So it's pretty exciting to see what comes up. I think one discovery this week was seeing a wanted ad in the San Francisco Examiner, Eudora Welty looking for a house to stay at while she's in San Francisco.
Oh, that's great.
So looking forward to that session on May 4th. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. So I thought we'd start with a little bit of background information, and then we'll proceed to our discussion. I wanted to mention two things that Eudora mentions that she is publishing. One is an essay about, that's coming out in a collector's edition, about Ida Matoy, who was an elderly Black woman who ran a secondhand clothing business. And here's what Anatole Broyard said about this essay, which appeared in his review of The Eye of the Story, the book dedicated to Ken. Ida, as she was known, had been a midwife for 35 years before going into the secondhand clothes business, and the author observes that to trace this connection between delivering the child and clothing the man is an interesting speculation. For if Ida had not been a midwife, she would not be the same kind of secondhand clothes dealer she is. Midwifery set her off. It gave her a hand in the mysteries an alchemist would run in a secondhand clothing business with extra touches. A reminiscence of glitter would cling to the garments he sold, and it is the same with Ida. So that's the essay that had come out in the 40s, and that was being celebrated at the University of Illinois, come out in Accent Magazine in 1979. The second essay she mentions is looking back at the first story, which was an essay in the Georgia Review about the publication of Death of a Traveling Salesman. So she mentioned some friends in Kentucky. The friend was a woman named Susan Turner, who taught at Vassar, who worked on Robert Lowell and Elizabeth Hardwick and lived in Versailles, Kentucky now. So that's Susan Turner. She mentions friends in England that she spent some time with on weekends when she was there. And I'm pretty sure that was Mr. and Mrs. Edward Mallins. He taught at Christ Hospital School in Sussex, and she had met him in 1954 at the American Studies Conference at Cambridge. She might also have seen Alan Jones, who was another friend from that time, a British academic from Wales that she liked very much and who had visited here. There are two mentions of V.S. Pritchett, and we might want to talk about those. And Melissa is particularly interested in V.S. Pritchett, so we may get her to chime in. But I certainly want us to talk about the visit to the Pritchett's house when Eudora was in England in 1979. And then there's a reference to being rather sad at being back in London because of the loss of friends there. And primary among those friends was Elizabeth Bowen, the Anglo-Irish novelist and story writer who was born in 1899, died in 1973. And we've talked about the impact of her death upon Eudora, along with the death of Dermot Russell and Dolly Wells that same year. She wrote that, I'll just list three titles of novels by Elizabeth Bowen: The House in Paris, The Death of the Heart, and The Heat of the Day. I'm just mentioning those because they're my favorites, but you may have a different one. She was also a wonderful short story writer. Let me just read you this because I've just seen it. It's now available for scholars to read in the Welty family papers, and it's a letter home from England in 1950 from Eudora Welty to her mother about meeting Elizabeth Bowen. Elizabeth Bowen, and she met her at Bowen's Court, the Bowen's family home in Ireland, not far from Cork. So Elizabeth Bowen is one of the nicest people I ever saw. She is about 50, lovely looking with fair Irish coloring. Her husband just flew to London the day I came, so I didn't meet him. She is a nice country person. The book she wrote about Bowen's Court is in the library at home. I've never read it, and she hasn't got a copy herself, but you might enjoy looking into it to see where I'm staying. It's in the south of Ireland, about 25 miles from the sea, surrounded by these old hills with Druid remains on top of them. It's an old house built by her family from the stones out of the fields, and she says she thinks the marble in the fireplaces and mantelpieces is really polished field stones, big, perfect slabs, beautifully marked. There is a shabby kind of grandeur here, what Harper's Bazaar called decayed in Faulkner's old house in Oxford. In fact, it reminds me of that, though grander and older. The front door opens right into a big banqueting hall that you can that you can sit at and see the whole landscape from, no matter how late it is. It is so far north. Elizabeth says that in summer you can read outdoors at 11 o'clock at night. It's light now between 5 and 6. Birds live in the wells, jackdaws, and you can hear them stirring and singing early in the morning and at evening. Big beech trees, pastures, fields, woods, a little clear river. Right in front of the house is a grove the children always called the lamb's drawing room. And sure enough, the sheep and lambs are right in it. A beautiful old garden, now with tulips, anemones, narcissus, scillas, bluebells. Roses don't do well, no clay in the soil. It's beautiful black earth, big peony plants, a family chapel down the road, old barns and farmhouses, and you can see for miles and miles away a beautiful country. Still that wind. So I just love that description of Bowen's court, which I'd never read before the family letters were open. Eudora went to Bowen's court again in 1951. She went twice in 1951 when she was there. She went in 1954. She saw Bowen at her house in London at Regent's Park, near Regent's Park. And Bowen visited Jackson, I think, 6 times.
Wow.
Eudora also saw her in New York. So a very important literary friendship that is mentioned here in these letters. And one other bit of background. In 1979, there was a major flood in Jackson. It reached the Pearl River, the mighty Pearl, as Eudora used to call it in jest. The mighty Pearl was mighty. It reached a record 43.28 feet. It caused between $500 and $700 million in damages. It was triggered by torrential rains, and 17,000 residents had to evacuate, and it damaged thousands of homes, particularly in Northeast Jackson and Flowood, which is just to the east of us. Eudora's house was not flooded. My house, which is not far from hers, was not flooded. We're both on hills, but a lot of people were flooded. And so probably some of you in our group have stories about the flood, but that's what they're talking about. That was a major flood in Jackson. Reynolds Price had been riding with a cab driver who said, you know, we're going to have a flood here because they built all these dams up around to make the Ross Barnett Reservoir, and they are just riddled with crawfish. He said they'll just wash away in no time. I don't know if that was the case or not, but anyway, that's what the cab driver told Reynolds. Ken, Tom, you're going to become known as Ken Miller if we don't finish up soon. But anyway, that's not a bad name to be called. No. I wonder if you could talk about a few things. Number one, thought you might talk about Margaret Miller's novel, The Murder of Miranda.
Yes, that's a good idea. Uh, it seems to me, I haven't reread that one lately. It seems to me that that has to do with a young woman who's sort of misbehaving and out of line in a trial to many people. Does that ring a bell?
I thought I had read that it was about a older woman who disappears with a younger man.
Oh,
And but I thought it also dealt with memory loss, but I'm not sure.
oh, that could be. Well, that's the one where the I'm drawing a blank on this. I can say something about Anatole Broyard and
Yeah.
Margaret Millar. Uh, Anatole Broyard wrote a really mean put down review of Ken's book, Sleeping Beauty. And then later he did another kind of vicious review of The Blue Hammer. But in between, he was on a panel with Ken in New York, Book Critics Circle panel, and said some things that Ken took mild umbrage at in his way. And in the midst of all this, Broyard found cause, having said on this panel that there were so few books, complained there were so few books that were reviewable on a given day that, one of the things he had to do in his duties as a critic was to handle books that were, let's say, beneath him almost, and felt it was his duty to put people in their place reputation-wise. And you got the impression that he tried to do that with Ken. Anyway, after that, he found a book of Margaret Millar's and went to the trouble of reviewing that in the Daily Times and saying, now, this is what a novel should be, and this is the kind of novel I like to read, where the characters are delineated and they move around with reason and not just they're not just puppets dangling at the end of the author's scheme. Well, I will wrap up this rambling answer by also saying that he reviewed Miss Welty's book, the Eye of the Story,
Yes.
and the one she dedicated to Ken. And I'm sure he was well aware he had dedicated his book to her. Uh, he praised this book, of course, lavishly, and found cause to celebrate. I think just about every chapter except the one with her review of Underground Man, uh, which he did not mention that at all.
Yeah. So Margaret was his darling and Ken was not.
Right, right.
Uh, do you have anything, do you think we need to say anything about Jim and dropping out of school?
Oh yeah, well I guess I brought that up in an earlier
Yeah.
meeting. He was I guess it sounds like he was quite a boisterous kind of physically oriented kid who enjoyed skateboarding, surfing, and not so much reading. And it's typical, though, in a way that Ken would blame himself and Maggie. You know, I mean, it's really a bit of a stretch, I think, to say that the boy dropping out of school was because that they had put too much emphasis on education or whatnot. I mean, it just sounds like he did not intend to pursue that at all. And later, you know, sad things happened to him and he died young.
All right. And Stephen Leacock, do you know?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. I well remember my financial education, was it called? My financial situation. There was a very funny story by Leacock. These pieces go way back, in the early 20th century, well, 20s anyway. And but that was a well-known story when I went to high school. I think it was in one of our readers, and he's a Canadian writer. Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town, I think, or maybe I'm mangling the title, but that's a lovely book he wrote. He was a very well-known author, and a lot of Ken's humor, I think, in his detective fiction, his wisecracks and witticisms are, to me, they seem much more like Stephen Leacock than Raymond Chandler. Uh, I think Ken was shaped by Leacock, and he said somewhere he could. Oh, about the Sunshine Sketches book, I think he said. Well, anyway, Leacock, he said he could do anything but make you cry. But I think the Little Town book, I felt a little moist at the end of that one.
All right. So, yeah. So, and Eudora says her father gave this book to friends, to her mother. Yeah. So,
It's wonderful.
yeah. All right. Well, let's move on and start talking about the chapter we have for today, 1979. Harriet, do I see you with a question?
Do. Tom, I just wanted to ask you, I was tickled by seeing Ken said that he had sat in on a local murder trial yesterday. And I wondered if, research going to trials, and I wondered if that had been a habit of his, is that was not just this occasion. Had he been doing that all along?
Oh, they both had for uh, you could almost say almost all their lives. I mean, they began in Canada. Uh, they went to court proceedings and used it for material and for uh, human experience, character sketches, studying people's behavior under stress, and judging their veracity, ability to lie, and anyway, all the things you would see at court. And Maggie used those trials, Santa Barbara trials, in her books, and he did in his. Their lawyer, Harris Seed, claimed to me that he could identify specific cases, but in Ken's books, and Maggie discovered that this was back in Canada, I think, that the human body, dead floating corpses, male corpses floated face up, and women corpses floated face down. She thought that was somehow significant humanly. Yeah, there are a lot of parallels, and Brad Dara's story in People magazine about Ken. He goes to court with Ken, and Ken is like commenting to him about the character traits of the people, and I see now he didn't want to sue this person, but his wife didn't want him to, but he was determined to, and she's sitting, and that sort of thing. He was very perceptive. He honed his perceptions in the courtroom.
Eudora, when she was a student in New York, she and her friends would go to night court. And they got a big kick out of going to night court. And then later she followed lots of murder trials in Mississippi. One was the Legs murder, where she told me this story. And I think Hunter Cole uses this also, I think, in his book about this murder trial, that a woman had killed her mother, and they stuffed her up the chimney. And I think that it was they never found the legs anyway.
That's a good short story, Don.
Yeah, and a woman Eudora knew was drying out in treatment for alcoholism, and she was in the same mental hospital with this murderess, and so they were all playing bridge together. And at one point, the woman that Eudora knew slapped her cards down on the table and said, "Not another card will be played till you tell us what you did with the rest of your mother." So there you are. So an interest in trials there too. Yeah. All right, let's talk about this chapter. Other things about this chapter. Anyone want to start us off? Something that stood out? I know that Anna has something she wants to, and then let's go with Monica first, Anna. Go, Monica.
Well, I just absolutely love the September 20th letter where she says, "I had a dream in your handwriting.
Oh,
My
good.
dreams sometimes come in words. It was a little less than a page long, written in very dark ink or with soft black pencil on lined paper. You wrote down my dream, or I dreamed you wrote my dream. Where did these things come from then? If only I could remember after waking what it said, but you see it's left traces." So there's that earlier letter where she talks about their trading dreams, but this just absolutely, I love this.
Yeah, what about it, Monica? What stands out for you about this?
Well, first of all, that she dreams in writing to begin with, that this isn't new. I find that fascinating. And then also just this absolutely romantic, like he wrote her dream down in her dream, that again kind of resonates with that earlier dream that she had. But yeah, I didn't know that she dreamed in words.
Yeah, I dreamed you wrote my dream. I love that too.
Yeah.
Do
And
other people dream in words? I mean, I said the same thing. I don't think I've ever dreamed writing. I mean, what I'm picturing here is that the dream is on a page.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, she says it was a little less than a page long, written in very dark ink or with soft black pencil on light paper. Like this is a visual writing. I mean, I occasionally will see writing in my dreams, but never anything to the extent of this that I could tell you like what the paper looked like.
I think to add to that point, there's like very few people that I can like recall their handwriting. That's like my mom, my dad. Like that shows such a deep intimacy that not only is she dreaming, but she's dreaming in his handwriting.
You're right. That is so intimate. That's such an intimate detail. Thank you.
And I wonder too, because the letters have gotten so much fewer, if it's a longing for letters, for this relationship to go back to the kind of frequency that it had and on the page.
Mm.
And certainly the depth of the emotion. Tom, did you want to?
Oh, it's just gorgeous. Um, yeah, that one really gets me, and the earlier ones too. But you're right, that's even more extraordinary. And the way she describes the paper and this shade, the light pencil writing and all of that, extraordinary. Also, I like the line about she talks about the flood. She says it trespassed on all likelihood that you go to look out the door and see a lake down the street. I like when she says, uh, she explains how she's making money to repair the house. So she's not just going on these trips. When she goes, she says, I'm making bricks.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that business with the foundation too, but I'll come to that. Anna, you had a passage you wanted us to look at.
Sure, I'll go ahead and mention this. And it's really like not a question more than it is just like I was interested in it. This is from the letter, let's see. Um, what date did I say this letter was from, Suzanne? I'm struggling to find it now in my highlights.
April 26th, 1979. In my book, it's on page 426 in the hardcover.
Yes. Okay, here we go. From April 26th, Ken says to Eudora, for a woman who speaks softly and doesn't deliberately seek adventure, you do have your share of experiences. And I was really struck by the phrase. I mean, perhaps she did speak softly, but the phrase doesn't deliberately seek adventure. That doesn't, to me, ring true of Eudora. I think that, she says in her memoir, serious daring starts from within. And we see that in her early childhood, but we also see her as a young woman at my age, in her mid to late 20s, spreading her wings, going far off, both within the United States and abroad. And I think that, like, at this time in her life, at the time that Eudora and Ken would be corresponding, he would have seen Eudora's daring. He would have seen her adventurous spirit, or I would hope, and at the risk of revealing what I perceive to be as Eudora, it seems that he has a perception of her too that doesn't necessarily align with, like, that she was quite adventurous. I'm thinking to that next thing that I highlighted, whenever she's visiting London, and she's talking about how she's kind of saddened by these things that she's missing, but there's still so many extraordinary things to be seen. And if not now, then never. And it's showing that she's still seeking these adventures later in her life. So I don't know, it's not really a question, just more kind of struck by, despite their intimacy, it seems there is still a difference in his perception of her to perhaps what was reality.
What do you think about this? Eudora was soft-spoken, and she did live out her life with her primary residence in Jackson, Mississippi, but she went off to graduate school to Columbia on her own to New York City. Then in 1949, at age what would she have been? 10 years younger, 39, almost 40. 49, she would have been 40, and in April. So she went off in her 40s to Europe by herself, and traveled around for almost a year by herself on her own.
Wow.
I mean, that's something a lot of people wouldn't do. And so, and now at age 70, she goes to visit V.S. Pritchett. He's 79. She's thinking of him as old. She's 70, and She says, I took the bus back to Oxford. I thought that was pretty good. He put me on a bus right there at the corner of the street, and she said, I wanted to see more. Most of my friends, I still like to ride the bus and I love to ride the tube. But most of my friends here say, now, how are you going to get around? That refers to them that I'm not going to get a cab. I won't do it. I'm morally opposed to it. But that's kind of Eudora spirit. So he doesn't seem to see that, Harriet.
I was going to say, I think I've come to be glad that she's traveling as much as she is. One reaction to her travel can be, that we are missing stories that she might have finished if she hadn't been traveling so much. But I think she's accepting the idea that she's not able to work and finish, and that she is just going on the road and is having, if not now, when she's traveling to for adventure, as much as for out of obligation. And it's putting she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I accepted these things, but I thought I only accepted them because they were so far away." But I'm not sure about that. I think maybe she's enjoying getting around.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I mean, I think there's a lot of pleasure here. Meeting V.S. Pritchett is a tremendous pleasure to her, and talking to him about writing. Traveling around England again is a great pleasure to her. Going to see Sweeney Todd on Broadway is a great pleasure. And even sitting around the fire in Versailles, Kentucky, chatting with old friends is a great pleasure. So I have sometimes wondered if she traveled to because she felt she couldn't write, you know. Is it I'm at a point now where I cannot finish things to my satisfaction. And I don't want to embarrass what I've written before. Or is it that she needs the money? I mean, she's got to pay for that foundation for the house. That's a wonderful letter about finding the seashells and the clay and all of that. And I remember talking to the foundation man, Mr. Ewing, here in Jackson, who about that. He said, yeah, when Miss Eudora, he said, asked me to repair the foundation, she said to me, please don't do violets to my father's house. So, yeah, so she was worried about the house, but she had to pay this money. Had to have a roof. She's had to have foundation. So she may need the money. That may be part of it. And she may be really upset because she and Ken are separated, and communication is becoming more difficult. And this is a way of not feeling that kind of loneliness, perhaps. She's lost a lot of friends. She's lost Dermot. She's lost Dolly. She's lost Frank Lyle. She's lost Elizabeth Bowen. And so here's a way of maybe coping with that, of going to those kind of literary friends, seeing them. So, but it's a question, yeah. But I like you. I'm glad you said it makes you happy that she's traveling, Harriet. That makes me feel good. Yeah.
I was going to say about the house, that the house foundation, her description of hammering with a big mallet that looked like clowns hit the other clowns with over the head, and her wanting to, her imagining her dad saying, "Get them out of here." I thought that was great. And talking about the flood, I thought that she describes how people behaved well. Nobody looted. Of course, there were the snakes, but the snakes were displaced too. And then that wonderful response from Ken, even to the snakes, your heart went out.
Yeah.
They were displaced too. What a dear woman you are. And she is. Not everybody would respond that way.
No, I don't believe I would. I'd be hysterical if I saw a snake. Okay, so we have this whole business of travel and what the travel means, and I think that's a really interesting question that this speaks to. What else What else in this chapter stands out to you? Anything?
Well, just a very brief thing. We can see Ken's memory loss. We can sense it becoming greater, but you also sense his uh, going out of his way to not to just not disguise it, but to minimize it, to not talk about it so much. Uh, he's he doesn't want to bring her down as it would be, and he's putting a brave face on things and emphasizing positive things about their communication. Uh, but I think he knows, he knows by now that things are disintegrating.
I was struck by the, references to letters that aren't there.
Uh,
So that he's lost letters from Eudora. I mean,
uh,
I think he'll refer to things reported, but we haven't seen that letter where it was reported to him. Now, there also seem to have been more phone calls during this time, so they may have
yes,
been
yes, yes,
compensated
and attempted phone calls.
in attempted phone calls.
And that must have been one of the occasions when Maggie suggested they call Eudora one day.
Mhm.
Maggie was feeling happy about her own career. She had a book out. She had another book out. Maybe I don't know how to put it, but she was in a good mood and perhaps wanted Ken to be too.
So yeah, so there's we have a much stronger sense of his memory loss here, I think, even though it's not mentioned.
Right.
And not mentioning it, I think you're right, Tom. That's the
Mhm.
kind of defensiveness. Yeah. Laura.
Well, I was thinking about that too, about how there seemed to be more phone calls. And the one thing I noticed, I loved the letter about the seashells. Um, but she wrote on the June 26th letter, it gives me a pang to think others can see you and I can't. Well, anyway, I've got seashells somewhere near me. But then I thought the way that they've always shared so much back and forth about people they meet, I was really struck that it didn't seem, at least via letter, that Ken responded about her description of meeting V.S. Pritchett.
Mhm.
And it hurt, like I felt, maybe it's just me, but I felt like that must have been a pang for him, thinking of Eudora meeting V.S. Pritchett, because they hadn't been able to meet. But I mean,
And
maybe they talked about it on the phone.
yeah, he admired Pritchett greatly too.
Hmm.
So you would
I was
think,
just struck that he didn't respond.
yeah,
It seems like he didn't respond to that.
I think that's right. That's another mark of a fading
Mhm.
attention. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else? Anything else?
Harriet, did you have something?
Harriet.
Too. Yeah, I wondered about the phone calls because I wondered how often they've been coming and if this is new, or if they'd occasionally called. But she did like letters. I mean, the fact that it's all in letters has
Like, yeah, Eudora did not like talking on the phone.
Mhm.
I was going to say that the fact that they preserve it in letters seems to me to be something about the relationship and the kind of relationship that it is. But I was thinking about Ken. Um, sometimes his language is gorgeous, and then I think we're beginning to see him losing language. Your wonderful letter about the Constable watercolor in it, matching your prose, has waited unconsciously long for an answer. And even now, I can't write you a proper one. It's not unconsciously long; it's unconscionably. And I think there's evidence of aphasia setting in, of language, of his not being able to grasp the word that he wants. While there are other passages at the beginning of this chapter that are beautiful, I think we're seeing a change.
Just to echo that sentiment, there's a comment in the chat from Liz Bender, who was struck by Ken's study of affirming of Eudora as his life and memory got harder for him. So in the same time that he's having that loss, he is, she says, as if he has willed himself to make sure he was present for her.
Mm. Nice.
Tom?
That's very nice. Yeah. Ditto.
I wanted to talk about a passage in my book. It's on 438. Let me get you the reference where Eudora is talking about the nature of the novel, what the novel can do. And this, I think, does not elicit a response as it usually would have. Ken. She's been reading his novels, in Archer and Jeopardy, the novels there.
Right, right.
And so she says to him, "It's strange, isn't it?" This is the letter of November 22nd, 1979, an ominous date. It is strange, isn't it, that novels have a power to move our imaginations in the same way that ships on the water do, but not really strange either. They're impelled by human dreams and come from the kind of hope, from the hand of hopeful human beings, and reach destinations we pray will be human like us. The power of the imagination is like the same moves as the same way ships do, that ships on the water do. And that stress on the imagination, I always said that I always knew the worst thing Eudora Welty could say about someone was he has no imagination. That was damning. And so here she's talking about the importance of the imaginative spirit. They have a power to move our imaginations. So she's seeing the power of fiction as the power to move your imagination, not your intellect particularly, maybe your intellect, maybe to spark your intellect, but it's the moving of the imagination, of that sense of creating a world in which you're living and you're imagining yourself into it. I think that's what she's talking about here. There's something in the chat, Monica, let me read that. Ships at a distance have every man's wish. What is that? You're going to read that for us, Monica?
Well, the first line of Their Eyes Were Watching God, the Zora Neale Hurston novel, is ships at a distance have every man's wish on board.
Oh, yeah, that's very much like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because she's saying that that's what our wishes are. They're impelled by human beings and come from the hand of hopeful human beings. I'm not sure novels always come from the hand of hopeful human beings, but she's putting that positive cast on it for Ken, at least.
Well, I think that there's the sentiment that any sort of creation is a hopeful act. That if you're going to make something, that it's showing that you think there's going to be a future in which it will exist.
Yeah. And maybe it's also that what Eudora says, fiction is made by the imagination for the imagination, and there's a connection between writer and reader, and that connection is a hopeful sign. Yeah, Harriet. Nope. And I'm also thinking, of course, of that sense of enlarging yourself, of empathizing, of not of judging, but of imagining yourself into the lives of people not yourself. So, yeah. But unfortunately, I don't think he really does respond to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe there's a lot of references to sailing and ships in the ocean, and he tells her those are some of his strongest memories. There's some response. He says, you know, I'm a sailor too, and my father was. And if he doesn't respond specifically to certain things, I think he responds to their to what he does think of and shares what he can with her.
And I think her choice of that metaphor may be because of
All right.
his experience. Other things here. I thought it was interesting to find out what happened to those Monets.
Well, again, about not remembering things, I think this whole thing about his story about which was very early, they asked him about the museum theft. Uh, and this letter too is about what happened to the Monets. He still doesn't mention his book,
The Blue
Hammer, which has to do with had that come out? That had come out, hadn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes, it had.
Which has, even more to do with the real life plot of what happened, as I recall. So, some things perhaps that's an example of he just didn't remember the recent thing.
I'm wondering, Tom, am I misremembering that like he did mention a possible similarity before we found out about the truth of the case? Like the guard borrowed his book, but then he received the book in return with no note. Am I misremembering this?
Perhaps. Maybe
Um,
so. I think he was talking about the museum people who
who borrowed the book?
yeah.
And this is on in January 26, 1979. As often happens in our correspondence, the answer to your question about the Monet case arrived today at just about the same time as your question. The Santa Barbara News Press reported that the young museum guard, age 26, who took the Monets, pleaded guilty to the crime and was given a 1-year jail sentence to be served here with a 4-year state prison term suspended. The young man may be put on a work furlough program, which will mean that he can spend his working days, if not his nights and weekends, outside. There may have been a feeling in the court that he did what he did as a kind of game, replacing pictures with copies made by himself or his father in the frames. The frames he destroyed for some reason, and he must pay for. Strange, he says. So, yeah, the link to, and I think in the note to this that and in the footnotes to your this chapter.
Laura, did you have something to add?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, not so much on that case, although I can imagine that anyone doing that today would get off quite so easy.
Yes.
Um,
Here's what our note says. Strange, too, that Ken doesn't make overt reference to similarities between these real-life events and the plot of his 1976 novel, which involves a painting apparently stolen by a museum guard, alleged forgeries, and an artist father. So
It's another example of Ken's uh, psychic abilities, or if you will. And Maggie had that too.
yeah.
Well, at least, many times they wrote books or stories with incidents that came to pass. As he says in one of these letters, uh, our fictions, written and unwritten, are coming true.
Yep.
Maybe Miss Welty, had something like that. Did that ever happen in her work?
I don't think of something, but I'll put my mind to it now. Laura?
I'm finding the quote that I was thinking I had to reference. This is from the previous chapter, December 16th, 1978.
Right.
No solution, Ken writes to Eudora, no solution on the stolen Monet case, but I gather it had to do with the faking and substitution of the painting hanging in the gallery. Everything will come out at the trial, no doubt. The closed mouth gallery sent my story back without comment. So I think that like something had happened with the book there.
Yeah,
But
the short story. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Now, Laura, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was going to ask about Wilkie Collins because I don't,
Okay.
he's been mentioned in previous chapters, but I don't think it's been talked about. But I wanted to propose that I think we should all start a new tradition of reading Wilkie Collins on the longest night of the year.
Okay.
Um, but anyway, I would love to hear anything and everything about Eudora and Wilkie Collins because he's an author that I really love.
Oh,
So all I know is that she did read both The Moonstone and The Woman in White. Have I got the titles? Have I correctly remembered those titles?
Yeah, she was also reading Armadale, I think, as well.
And but Eudora, I always found she was a voracious reader, and I never could mention a title that she hadn't read. I think she had a lot of titles I hadn't read, but I didn't have any that she hadn't read. And um, the Wilkie Collins novels are ones that I know about but haven't read. Anyone in our group, another other readers of Wilkie Collins besides Laura? We'll start. I'll read with you, Laura, on the longest night of the year.
It's a good plan.
Other Wilkie Collins readers here. There's a bookshelf in Eudora's upstairs, what was her brother's bedroom, that is filled with mysteries, and the Wilkie Collins are there with the other mysteries. Yeah, yeah, Harriet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, working on Welty mystery, that uh, she's always been a mystery reader, and now she's particularly a mystery reader because she's in this conversation with Ken, and I think that she's selecting reading that she can discuss with him, and but it's a great book, and she good taste. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I think it's interesting, of course, that she has always been a mystery reader, and mysteries are totally plot driven, and her fiction is very much not plot driven. But always she says, the plot is the metaphor carrying the meaning
yeah.
of the book. Yeah.
Fiction is also full of mystery and full of mystery, but not mysteries solved, mysteries that are complicated and enriched and rather than solved and put away.
Yes. Now, uh, Richard Ford was just here giving a lecture uh, at the Welty House, and I remembered that when I interviewed him in 1986
Yeah.
for Mississippi Public Radio, my first venture really here, I was asking him about Eudora, and he said, "What Eudora taught me was that a story can reveal a mystery rather than resolve it, or a story, he may have said, should reveal a mystery rather than resolve it." And that's, I think, what her stories do. Yeah.
Tom had his hand up.
Yeah. Go, Tom.
I think T.S. Eliot said that he thought The Moonstone was the greatest mystery novel ever written.
Oh, there you are, Laura. Pretty good confirmation.
I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, that's great.
All right. There is one mention in here of a person who was very and continued to be very important to Eudora Welty, who was her first great love of her life, if Ken Miller was the second, and that is John Robinson. And in her letter of October 21st, 1979, she says, I'm writing by the window in my upstairs room where the oak tree just outside is filled with kinglets and some kind of olive green tiny birds, warblers, all busy feeding. It's a long dry spell here. I've been moving the sprinkler about all day trying to keep the camellias and azaleas going. They're all in bud. The other day I went with an old friend, that's John Robinson, and she doesn't name him here, but it is who it is, now living in Italy, to where we used to go on picnics down by an area of the river where the flood had come in so high. It was lovely. We took another picnic. The sweet gums were starting to turn scarlet. The oak leaves were falling and covered the ground where the Pearl River had clawed and peeled it clean, and the water itself was just full of fish, leaping up and popping up and splashing all over. Birds surging, birds singing. The flood had obviously been enjoyed by all that called the place home. So here she and John Robinson still on very good terms, repeating the picnics of their youth. And she writes to tell Ken about it, and writes with details that she knows he would really appreciate, I think. So that's another interesting thing is the relationship with Robinson in 1979, still a close one. It's also probably interesting that she doesn't bother to mention his name. It's not important for Ken to know it, this kind of history. All right. Any final things for us to talk about?
Harriet?
Yep.
I'd say something I was thinking about what Ken is getting done during this period with the help of his publishers, the collection reviews coming out. And what really interested me in that exchange between them is she says, so many books and writers I've never had the chance before to know your thinking and feeling about. His response, it gave me nothing but pleasure, much of which came from the knowledge that I could pass it on to you. That sounds to me like he is writing with her, or he's working with her as his audience, which is something that I think happens, when people are, think about working in the Welty community where we have a sense of responding to being in a conversation, and your work having a particular audience. And now looks to me like Welty has become his audience, not only in the letters, but also in the work that he's coming out with.
I think she was in Sleeping Beauty
Yeah.
Tom, what about that book of book reviews? Was that gotten up by Ralph Sipper, or was Ken actively involved in producing that book?
Oh, was that Lord John Press? That's somebody else, I think. It's another fellow who.
Yeah, Herb Yellen, I think, maybe.
Yeah. I think that was something that fellow came up with, and then he would use all these occasions to write the prefaces, which was strung together sort of a thin sort of autobiographical passage kind of collection, weaving a little thin story of his life, as a career as a writer. So those kinds of books had a double purpose in a way, double value.
And in writing the foreword, that may have been very much the case, what Harriet's talking about, writing with Eudora's audience.
Yeah, and they were harder and harder for him to write.
He's also gotten this advance of $30,000 for the book that won't come. I've never wondered before what happens to an advance when it's promised and the book doesn't and the book doesn't appear. Is that something that has to be returned?
Usually, I believe they used to be pretty nice about it. Came a time when people could start being nasty about it. I knew somebody who died and had gotten in a big advance, and this woman, I won't name, threatened to sue and so on, but that's rare, I believe.
I'm just thinking it's his publishers being supportive. Yeah.
Well, he had never taken an advance for a novel, and he did this as a goad. He thought perhaps this would help him, spur him on to finish a book.
Anyone that wants to finish up, I'll let them, but I thought I would mention one more quotation, and this is in the letter of September 8th, 1979, and it has the quotation we took as the chapter heading. She's writing to Ken about their relationship, and she says, "I'm afraid everything I put down must read like a platitude. You know that however ignorant I am about this, I feel for the way I know it has made you feel. Going with Jim, besides trust, there's mutual admiration and respect, and there's love. Nothing can change that companionship for a venture if you're a child or if you're long traveled in experience. I feel less and less that our years tell us all that much just by rolling over us. What we need is one another. I feel less and less that our years tell us all that much just by rolling over us. What we need is one another." So that human connection is what we need, and that's drawing to a close. So last thoughts. Well,
It's a good place to end.
yeah. Then next time we will talk about the letters from 1980 through 1982. And then we will talk about Henry, an unfinished story. The manuscript Eudora was working on late in life that dealt directly with the life of Kenneth Miller. And it was very fragmentary, so we pulled what we can together, and we'll see what you think of that. We'll talk about that. All right. Thank you all. See you next time.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Bye-bye.